I'm Jeremy Eaton. The Federal Minister of Natural Resources is in St. John's this week, and he's taken out some time to answer some questions. Thanks for joining us, Minister. Let's jump right into it. Recently, your government approved the Bay du Nord project. In your opinion, do you think that this could be the last one?
Well, I spoke to the Board of Trade today, and what I said is there's a lot of misconceptions about the role of fossil fuels as we move forward to a lower carbon future. We are going to have to reduce the amount that we use, and we are going to have to stop burning it eventually in 2050. But there's still significant amounts of oil and gas that we are going to use in a net zero future. We're just not going to burn it. We're going to use it for petrochemicals and waxes and lubricants and hydrogen. And in that context, it's the lowest production emission sources that are going to actually be the most important on a go-forward basis. And so with Bay du Nord, I said very clearly that from my perspective, that's a good project because it is one of the lowest carbon-intensive production barrels of oil that you are going to see in this country or in any other country around the world. Those are the kinds of barrels we're going to need going forward. I think the threshold for new projects is going to be, can you actually effectively copy what Bay du Nord is doing, which is very low emissions and a target of getting to net zero by 2050.
Your colleague, the Minister of the Environment, seemed to cast doubts on the fact that the government will approve another project like this. What do you say to that?
Well, there was a lot of looking into it for sure. I would say projects like that have often taken a reasonable amount of time to move through the regulatory process. So I don't think that was particularly novel. And what the Federal Environment Minister, I used to be the Environment Minister, what the Federal Environment Minister has been saying is we need to ensure that we're giving proponents certainty about what the policy framework is going forward. And so one of the commitments he made when Bay du Nord was approved was that we are going to put in place a policy framework for all future projects that reflect the fact that we are driving to net zero, that reflect the fact that there will be a cap on oil and gas emissions that will actually decline over time. Projects going forward then, and proponents of projects going forward, will have certainty about what they need to do in order to actually meet that threshold. And as I say, Bay du Nord is a great example of that. It uses best-in-class technology, and it actually produces barrels of oil with virtually zero carbon emissions.
When it comes to transitioning away from oil, in your speech to the Board of Trade today, you said that people tend not to fully understand what that transition means. In your opinion, what are people not getting?
I think there's a couple of things. I think one is that people have gotten to this perspective that somehow fossil fuels are the cause of climate change, and that's just logically not true. It is the burning of fossil fuels that is the cause of carbon emissions, which causes climate change. And so a lot of people don't understand that even in a net zero world in 2050, the International Energy Agency says we're still going to need a quarter of the amount of oil that we produce today and half the amount of natural gas. We're just not going to burn it. We are going to use it for all of these other applications that I talked about before. And so I think that's part of a conversation that Canadians need to be clear about, because even in a net zero world, we're not getting rid of all of the production of oil and gas. The second issue that I think is really important is we talk about this low carbon future, but I don't think we've really painted a picture for Canadians about what that looks like. And I think for a lot of people, they think, well, that means everybody's going to have a solar panel in their house, or there's going to be a wind turbine in everybody's backyard. That's not exactly what it means. There are all kinds of jobs and industries that are going to be created that are going to be consistent with a net zero world, but are going to actually leverage the skill sets that exist today. So the offshore oil and gas industry, a lot of those skills are going to be absolutely relevant to onshore and offshore wind development for the purpose of hydrogen. You know, critical minerals and the processing is a manufacturing job. We'll need manufacturing skills. And so I think one of the things that I'm trying to do through these regional energy and resource tables that we are working on with Newfoundland and Labrador, and will be working on with every province and territory, is painting that picture of what the future looks like and where these jobs are going to be and what the skill sets are going to be required. My concern is not these days that we're going to displace workers and they won't have jobs. It's actually we're going to have more jobs than we have workers, and we're going to have to figure out how to address that.
What does the future look like for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who work in the offshore sector or in Alberta? What will new jobs look like for them?
Well, I think Newfoundland and Labrador has some huge opportunities, but let me just talk about two. One is the utilization of the wind resource. You have great wind resource here for the purpose of actually making hydrogen. And you can use onshore wind and you can use offshore wind. I will tell you, in the aftermath of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we are seeing enormous interest on the part of the Europeans, and the Germans in particular, in securing sources of hydrogen from Canada, and in particular, sources of hydrogen from Newfoundland and Labrador. And that's so that they can actually accelerate the move towards the energy transition, towards renewables and hydrogen, to make them truly energy independent. So we have an opportunity to seize that, to be an energy provider in a low carbon world to the world. And so that will drive jobs in the offshore. It will drive jobs onshore in terms of wind. I was actually just meeting with Maersk, and they're thinking about how this actually will become a core part of their business. They service the offshore oil sector right now, and their focus now going forward is servicing the offshore wind. So I think that's one huge opportunity for Newfoundland and Labrador. The other, I would say, is critical minerals, where there is no energy transition unless we figure out how to actually produce more copper and lithium and cobalt and nickel. And Newfoundland and Labrador has a lot of untapped resources of these critical minerals. There is a huge opportunity, especially in remote and rural communities, to actually help us with that challenge, to mine those critical resources, but also to process them here in Canada. And ultimately, we want to manufacture the batteries and manufacture the electric vehicles and a range of other things. I would say the critical minerals piece, from my perspective, is a generational economic opportunity, and it is an opportunity that is available to almost every province and territory in Canada. But I would say Newfoundland and Labrador in particular has a huge opportunity.